back, everyone. This is Trigger Bar Philosopher. We're going to be doing a tabletop review of the new M&P 5.7, chambered in 5.7 by 28. Again, this is a hammer fired and has a rotating, they call it the tempo system, a rotating barrel for a piston gas system, or a gas system. So watch that. Let's do that. You can see that rotation. And that little rotation takes up some of the recoil, that's for sure. That was very obvious to me when I shot this, especially side by side with my PSA Rock, which I felt had zero recoil before testing this one. This is really pretty a phenomenal design by Smith & Wesson. I want to hand it to them. Wasn't super happy with the mag issues that I had early on, but you know, if I'm going to have them, I don't mind having them early on. I didn't have any later. I think that is just a little bit of a break-in issue. So how do you, a little bit of care and maintenance for this gun. For takedown, you bring it, see this, there's a little bit of a notch right there. And then on this side, there's a little bit of a hole inside there that you push that through. So again, you pull this back to here, you push in on that, this thing then comes out, and then this thing will just come forward once that's out. May feel like it doesn't exactly. And then take down, sort of normal capture spring. This big flat part, silver flat part, is at the end for when you're putting it back together. The more plastic tip is towards the end of the barrel. This is where you have a couple of things I do like about this system is that the thread protector is small enough so that you don't have to take out the thread protector when you take out the barrel from the gun. So I really do like that system. See, I was able to take that out. And then of course this rotates out, and then this is your barrel. Interesting, right? Super interesting design that they have there. So your lubrication points, and maybe I overdid it, but you're supposed to lube a little bit on these rails here. Once this is inside there, you're supposed to lube just a little bit. I'll try to bring a light a little bit over. Lube right down in there. You're supposed to lube on these rails, on these parts, on this part, and then the tip of the hammer. Sort of the lube points, but you can check out the manual for where to lube. So yeah, so that's the takedown. So now let's just put it back together. Again, I like that you can leave the thread protector on. Silver metallic part at the back. Oh, and I didn't really show how this locks in. I should do that. So this part, this bottom part here, locks into this little chamfer or cam area. And that's the rotating barrel. And then, yeah, and then this just goes back in here like this. All right. And then put your spring back like that. And then you can take this out, or I just leave it in every time. And you push this back on. You bring it back so that that little tiny bump is over that hole. This slides and presses in. And that's good to go. That's your takedown. This is super thin. I want to pull out my calipers and just take a look at how thin this barrel and slide is. Or sorry, let's take a look at the slide. Slide is less than an inch. So slide is showing 0.924 inches. I'm sure that looks like the widest part of the slide, right behind the chamber. 9.25 inches. And the grip Let's put it down on the grip. Just slightly over an inch, 1.023 inches at its widest spot. Grip feels super thin. It is long, right? And then of course it has a long barrel. So right under, between there and the trigger, 2.169 inches. It's got a long barrel, especially with the threaded barrel. But here is the PSA Rock. And if we go to the widest part, try to get around the same spot on the slide, it's 0.98, so about a half inch, almost a half inch wider there. And then 1.2 inches here, so about a quarter of an inch wider down there as well. So again, you look at them side by side. I thought the PSA Rock was super thin. You know, it gives the appearance of how much it's even more thin than it is because of the how wide it is, right? It's not as very wide for how thin it is, but this M&P is just really thin. The magazines, just comparing the magazines, I believe this is 23 rounder, this is a 22 rounder for the PSA Rock and for the M&P 5.7. You know, I think, you know, it's really interesting that it looks like, you know, the 22 rounder is quite a bit shorter. Almost you could get, if you made this the same length, you get 2 more rounds in it for the M&P. So it's pretty amazing how they got 22 rounds in something that's so much shorter than the 23 rounder from PSA. Nothing wrong. In fact, this is super easy to load, the PSA Rock. The Smith & Wesson one is super hard. You have to use their magazine loader, which is really kind of funky, which basically just shoves the bullets down in. But it's almost impossible to load the last 10 by hand. But versus the PSA Rock, it's super easy to load them. And I've never had a mag issue like I did today on my first round with the Smith & Wesson 5.7. All right, let's just do some trigger pulls. We have to make sure we get that trigger shoe depressed. All right, showing a 4-pound trigger. That makes sense. That's about what it feels like. I wonder if it'll lighten up over time. I don't know. That one's closer to a 3.5-pound trigger. That also makes sense. I would put it in that ballpark. It's a really nice, light, but very crisp trigger pull, 4 pounds. So 4 pounds, 3.75 pounds, somewhere in that ballpark. Let's take a look sort of close up. Here's where you have that take up, you meet that wall, and it just feels super crisp and stops. Reset, come back, come off, you're right on it. Not much at all. Sure, maybe 1911s, 2011s have a little bit less, but it's really not bad. This is on par with my P320's X5 Legion trigger that I sent off and spent a couple $100 on improving the trigger. I would say that the PSA Rock has a very similar trigger. I can't tell which of these I like better. They're very, very similar. Interesting thing with the PSA Rock, when I first measured it, and you can look back at my video, had about a 6-pound trigger pull. It's no longer a 6-pound trigger pull. It's super light. Let's just take a little bit of a measure. A little over 4 pounds is what it's saying now. I would believe it's very similar to the Smith & Wesson 4, 3.75, depending on the trigger gauge and all of that. Like I'm here at the end, a little bit more. It just feels so light and so crisp. Let me try and hold it on there. It says 5 pounds. It doesn't feel like 5 pounds. Again, I feel like it's a 4-pound trigger. It's super light. It could be 3.5. I'm probably just pulling it wrong. But, so what's my take on these two guns? I still really love the PSA Rock. It's a phenomenal gun. Philosophy of use. This is a gun for people that have difficulty with recoil management. This will be a very light shooting gun. So people who have arthritis, people who maybe are getting up in age and are losing arm strength, or people who just don't have the arm strength and grip strength that they need. So smaller individuals, I think my wife would enjoy shooting this. Downside is 5.7 is a very loud round. My wife doesn't like loud noises. She likes 22 more because of that reason. So is it the right gun for you? It could be. It could be. If you fall into one of those categories, or you just like the assurance of having 22 rounds with you, 23 if you have one in the chamber. If you get the right ammunition, I've been doing some testing, Elite Ammunition, Vanguard Outfitters, there's a few others out there that make really nice ammunition and that make this gun very competitive with 9mm in terms of energy foot-pounds on target. And then you combine that with having 22, 23 rounds for either of these guns, that's pretty awesome. My overall opinion is 5.7 has less recoil, is thinner, has a phenomenal trigger. I put the two on par with trigger and shooting. It's just a little less snappy. This isn't snappy. There's no snappiness. But when you compare the two, you feel like this is a little snappier and this is just a little bit smoother. So tell me what you think. I have a hard time choosing between these, the M&P 5.7 or the PSA Rock. I think either way you're going to be happy. I do believe the M&P 5.7 is a little bit more of a sweeter shooter, but as I showed in the previous video, it may not have as tight of a lockup on the rounds, and so you may lose some velocity. Please like, share, and subscribe, and put any comments.